You are watching another episode of Shane Solomon Meets, brought to you by the Cornwall channel. I'm your host, Shane Solomon, and today I'm meeting the wonderful Julien Boast from the Hall for Cornwall. So, Julien, it's been a long time coming to have you in the studio, and I'm very humbled and grateful to have you here. Your kind of thoughts, I always like to find out what people's thoughts are as they approach the Cornwall channel, because most people don't know what we're about or whatever, when they come. But what's your kind of first impressions?
Well, I was really excited to come here today, so thank you for asking me. And it's a beautiful location where you are. It's sort of an inspiring place to be creative. So I'm slightly bowled away. I want an office like this.
It is impressive, right? And this is the thing. This is why I want people to come, because we all live in that digital world now where everything's online, but you still can't beat walking into a premises like me walking into the nice, shiny, new, amazing hall for Cornwall and getting that buzz. You can look at every picture you like, every promo video you like, but you cannot beat that walking on the floors.
Absolutely. Well, we're both in two beautiful granite buildings.
We certainly are.
Mine's a bit bigger than yours.
No, yeah, exactly. No, come on. Now, I want to talk about all the amazing things. Obviously, we know the hall has had a huge revamp, which you played a huge part in that. It's in a fantastic place now, isn't it? I mean, it's attracting audiences. It's attracting some great touring productions.
Yeah, we've been on a brilliant journey. I have to say, building that theatre was sort of the opportunity of my life, and I had really, really strong views on what it ought to turn into. And when I got the interview and got the job, I clearly said to everybody that the relationship between the stage and the auditorium wasn't brilliant. And so that was my starting point in terms of how do you get those shows to really pop out of that proscenium arch and, really, really sing and sing. So, that's been brilliant. And actually we're up on attendances on what we'd forecasted.
That's great.
And people are really, really enjoying being in the building. And I think it is down to the fact that the auditorium is very, very focused on that stage. And certainly one of the things I talked a lot about was having those pin drop moments in drama, when everybody just takes a deep breath in and you can't hear anything because everybody is absorbed in it. And certainly on Fisherman's Friends, which was our first show that we did.
That's right, I remember that, yeah.
I got that pin drop moment and was just like going, this is brilliant. So it's been an incredible journey and slightly humbling in terms of it had, 10 major funders on it. The whole of Cornwall sort of contributed through that sponsor of seats that we did. And so when you deliver something like that, that's so well loved, it's very humbling. It's, I sort of, I'm really thankful that Cornwall takes Hall for Cornwall to its heart.
Absolutely. And it can't have been easy behind the scenes. People look at it now and think this is wonderful. It must have come with some level of stress. Was there any point where you thought, God, what if I started here? Or was it all plain sailing, the construction of everything?
I think you always have to... I've done a couple of buildings before.
Okay.
And so my life has always been about producing things. So I, either produce shows or I had a scenery company where I was producing scenery. And so there's a sort of supply chain or a sort of chain of command that as long as you sort of work out what you're doing for the next 3 or 4 events and make sure those happen and then hold on to, I always talk about you need to hold on to what you're actually making and sort of cherish it and love it and look at it. So I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, really. And actually, when we reopened, I was remarkably calm and everybody was sort of going, this is quite not natural. But actually, all I did all the time was just go, what do I want to achieve on this day? What do I want to achieve on the week? What do I want to achieve on the month? And have a really good task management system.
Very inspirational. I love this because I look at the Cornwall channel. I'm nowhere near where I see the end goal yet with this, but it's just a constant taking it by the day, really. I live each day pretty much, and I think so. I don't do massive 5-10 years. I kind of try and break it down to the weeks and months, really.
Well, I drive my team mad because I'm constantly going, we'll do something next year, and then 2 years later we'll do this. So I think one of my strengths or weaknesses is that I'm always sort of looking to the future.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get ahead on stuff as well. Theatre is in a very privileged position. And certainly when I built that theatre, I wanted to create a different type of space that when you walked in it, you thought, I'm in Cornwall. And quite often when you go to theatres in other areas in the country, they could be anywhere. So there was something about the sort of the placing of it and the materials that actually was, I really wanted it to feel like it was slightly a different type of theatre.
Sure.
And of course it is, because you can see daylight from either side of the building.
And I love that they're opening the doors now through the day in some
yeah.
cases where people can actually walk through and see like the stuff being set up.
Yeah.
And that's quite rare, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really rare. I think the Kennedy Centre is the only place else that does it, really.
Yeah.
So, but I had a really strong feeling about it, backed up with a brilliant set of architects. And these architects had been with the Armida Theatre for 30 years. And I don't know if you know the Armida, but it's a really beautifully interesting building that has got lots of problems, but has kept lots of problems physically, but has managed to make the building work. So there was something absolutely about that building that it probably wouldn't have enough toilets. It doesn't have a cloakroom. You know, there are other things that we can't do, but it was really important to keep it on that site.
Sure.
And we did a sort of exercise about building a theatre on the side of the A30, but you'd not have had that sort of sense of place, contribution to the economy that it gives Truro.
Absolutely. Well, it's a whole experience. You go out for a meal beforehand. You can walk there. If you wanted to, stay in a place like Manning's and not, worry about taxis home or anything. I mean,
well, it's interesting. You can't get a table on a packed out show. You can't get a table before the show unless you've booked ahead.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant. That's great. And we're playing a part of Brand Truro and making sure that Truro is, the equivalent of a Bath or a York, and that's important to think about this high streets these days.
Absolutely,
really important to think about what drives a footfall strategy.
Let's talk about the youth of arts in Cornwall and the part that the hall plays in that. You've just successfully won some funding from the Share Prosperity Fund, which is great for Cornwall, great for the hall for Cornwall. What kind of things do you offer those communities that want to get involved in the arts?
So part of the main programme, which we call Cornwall Playhouse, is what we put on our stage. And then we have another area of the business which is called Get Creative. And Get Creative is a variety of things. So we do work in schools, we do wraparound work around our shows. So the RSC are coming to town. We'll do a lot of workshops for young people so that actually they've got a sort of entry point into Julius Caesar, which they're just presenting. And then we do youth groups. So we've got youngs, middles and seniors who do drama and also do contemporary dance. And we've all started doing all boys dancing. So there's a brilliant group of boy dancers who are brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the Share Prosperity is the Cornwall Culture Club. And that will be us.
Boy George.
No, not Boy George. Not Boy George. No, when we did it, I thought, Culture Club.
Sorry, it's too obvious. I had to put that
on. And so we will work in communities that haven't had access to theatre.
Okay.
And that was a legacy, and the Paul Hamlin Foundation 5-6 years ago gave us £500,000 to work with communities that don't normally access the arts. So one of the things I think was desirable at us as we went back is that we've had roots into all sorts of communities. So we'll go back out and find those, and then we're going to do some skills development with a more intensive pack of people that will come into the building and do workshops about confidence and other stuff. So it's always important when you run businesses to sort of, quite often we always just get centered on one thing, and actually, one of the things I wanted to do when we reopened was, launch our young people's work under Get Creative, and we're just doing another new venture which is called HUSA, which is within the building of workspaces for the creative industries.
Yeah.
So we've always looked after artists, and we've got a collection of, I think it's about 10 companies that work with us more intensively other than the artists on our database. And so by having to have studios in the building, we're slightly widening our approach. We've always sort of majored in on theatre and dance, and actually we've got Wildworks, who are the landscape theatre people who are in our building, and tech girls. And so that's expanding. That's good.
Yes.
And then we've just brought in Black Voices Cornwall.
That's it, Marcus Elaine. I know Marcus
Yeah,
very well.
yeah,
An
yeah.
amazing musician.
Yeah.
Person,
And
yeah.
Pride have just moved into the building.
Yes,
So
Matthew
there's
Gomez.
So there's a sort of, there's a real community. And I think a place where people can find a one-stop shop, really. You can do business in our bars or in our wonderful cafes.
And of course, David and yourselves have started up the networking events
Yeah.
there after work on a Friday.
Yeah, and a lot of that's been driven by, we bought in Polydent. So Polydent was, she set up 15 with Jamie Oliver.
That's right. I knew I recognised the name.
Yeah, well, she is the goddess of hospitality.
Okay.
And so Polly's joined us, and she's our theatre manager, and she's doing brilliant stuff and doing some really interesting stuff for actors as they come through. So she is doing cream teas on a Thursday for them. She's putting mini bars in their dressing rooms, and that's something our theatre just doesn't do, our industry doesn't do. So we're getting a real name for being one of the highlights on the tour. And that's the important thing. You want people to come to you, and not quite often. In the old days, it used to be called the Harvey Nicks tour, where you'd give an artist a tour list, and they'd go Brighton, yes. They'd go Bromley, no. They'd go Malvern, yes. And so what you want to do constantly is make sure that you're on that Harvey Nicks tour, so that those actors who sometimes only go out for 8 weeks will say, do you know what, I really want to play Cornwall.
Yes.
And so, Simon Callow is a good mate of ours. And actually, whenever he's doing stuff, we get a phone call and he says he wants to do Cornwall. And we say, we want Simon here, So it's, I often equate theatres to running hotels. What goes on in the hotel stays in the hotel.
Sure. I think it's right. And when did you know then you wanted to get into this industry? Did you, at school, did you know that you wanted to be within the arts industry and become a theatre manager and make props and sets and things like that?
I did quite well at chemistry, and so in that naive way, you thought, I'll do biology, chemistry and physics. I was hopeless. I was absolutely hopeless at A-level. And I had this wonderful tutor called Lieselotte Trubenbach, and she said,
That's a great name.
She said, you're hopeless. You're absolutely hopeless. And I'd sort of hung around the drama studio at my sixth form college, and then I did most of my A-levels for physics, drama, and physics, biology, and chemistry, and then sort of 3/4 of the way in jumped over to the arts department and the drama department and the English department, and I stayed 3 years doing A-levels. And so I always put it down to Lieselotte, and actually I wrote a blog piece about it. And I've also put a plaque on the back of the seats for Lieselotte. Actually,
brilliant.
She was very good. She was very funny. She
used
to wear one dress per term. And
really?
Yeah. She used to wear one dress a term, and you always knew the term changed because their dress changed.
That's interesting.
Yeah. She's German. She was German. She escaped the Nazis and ran across Europe and learnt 9 languages.
Wow.
And used to bang the desk about politics in the days that probably your teachers could but can't do that now.
Yeah.
So I got into drama at sixth form college, and then my careers teacher said, you'll never get into the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, don't even bother applying. And so I got into the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School.
Excellent. Well done.
And I go back and often do career sort of lectures saying, hold on to your dream, and when your career teacher says you can't do it, just go and do it. And then so I trained at the Bristol Old Vic, which was great. It was amazing. And I'm dyslexic, so it's a sort of perfect vocational course that actually sends you out with loads and loads of talents. And then I got an equity card. That's when you used to have to get equity cards.
Yes, I remember those.
Yeah, and so I got equity card at my home theatre in Southampton. And then stage managed, and then production managed, and then produced, and then ran my own business in London, and then eventually ran a theatre in Brighton before I came here.
Do you know, I can speak to you for ages, and unfortunately we don't have ages. You've got a theatre to run. I've got other guests coming in here today. But I do want to finish by asking you, when you're not working, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What's your kind of go-to kind of R&R? What's your hobbies?
So I like photography.
Okay.
So I've just bought a very lively Leica camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I do quite a lot of photography. I'm a good cook, and I garden.
Interesting.
And I garden. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I'm a good cook.
So we'll have to start sharing some of your photos on our social feeds.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get you in the kitchen that we've got here and do a Cornwall kitchen with Julien Boast, you know. What's your go-to dish then? What's your signature dish?
I was taught all sorts of things. I was taught by the man who taught Keith Floyd how to cook.
Okay.
And he taught my friend how to cook. So he taught Keith Floyd, and he taught this friend of mine. And so he used to build props. And so this man used to feed me as part of my wages.
Right.
And so when I was training, I just learnt how to cook by this brilliant man.
Wow. See, I'm only getting into that. I've recently had a new kitchen at home.
Right.
And that's inspired me to, learn a bit. And we film a few chefs here in Cornwall. Yeah. And I've just had a little dabble, and I'm getting the old YouTube videos out to see how to do certain things. Yeah. But it's certainly one of those things I want to expand on. Yeah. No, fantastic. Julien, is there anything you want to mention that I've not prompted you about? Obviously,
I think we've talked enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come back. I'll come back and cook.
I'll come back and cook. I would love that. And I just want to say a huge thank you for coming in.
And thank you for your support as well.
Oh, my goodness.
Keep doing this for Cornwall.
It's just a passion of mine. It really is. Well, there we are. If you're not connected to the wonderful man that is Julien, make sure you do so. Support the Hall for Cornwall if you're not already doing it. Some amazing shows down there. And as always, if you know anyone doing anything remarkable here in Cornwall, please let me know. Drop me an email, shane@cornwallchannel.co.uk. As always, my thanks to Jay for producing the podcast today. But until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you.